Yes.
Cherry Drive, 650 South.
Yeah.
Because they have people parking there.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah, shoot me an email. We'll find something. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not quitting.
No, but ooh, it's Jack. Nobody wants that.
Bury yourself.
Hi, good job.
David Spencer and I call ourselves.
Yeah. Meet you.
Hey, my friend, how are you? How are you doing? This is Steve. New assistant.
Good deal.
Hey, thanks so much on that. My spam is.
Good. It's great. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
By the way, this is Steve.
It's good. I hate to bug you.
Oh, no. Go ahead. You back me whenever you want.
Yeah. People are like that.
Yeah. This is what you do in the opinion.
So true.
I had to hide it from
Good. How you doing, Sam?
Good. Hi, how are you? They're in the same color jerseys, but probably different.
Yeah, exactly. Good for you. You got a game this weekend? Thanks again, bro.
Yeah, 11 a.m. I think.
We see you.
It was I like those 90s. It's like so much cooler. We had so much better before. It was hot. So,
Yeah, so I've got 11 and 1 o'clock this week.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so, but at least they're saying it's one's in the city, one's in. So at least they're saying enough in the city. Yeah, there's supposed to be water measures.
Yeah, so we can just one of the issues that they talk about.
I don't disagree with that. I just, my bad for last year. Yeah, because and then let's
Since I showed you.
so I don't disagree.
Yeah, so money together. What I do is, if I make an hour here or there a week,
And now there's 3 rooms, 3 laundries, 3 So I think it'll be
Okay.
just kind of
let's duck his pay.
Boomerang. I'm not seeing anything
Yes, I agree. We're at 15.
kind of like a part-time. Yeah, absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the City of Orem City Council meeting. My name is Tom McDonald. I'm Mayor Pro Tem. Our mayor got called out of town on business and asked me to conduct this meeting. We thank you for being here with us tonight. We'll first have an invocation by Gary Watts and a pledge by Matthew Andresen. So if you'll wait, Matthew, until after the prayer by Mr. Watts. Mr. Watts, please, if you go to the podium.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity we have to meet together and discuss issues pertaining to our city. We thank Thee for the government that we have, that we're able to have the freedoms to assemble and to worship Thee and to discuss items that would benefit our city. We ask that Thy blessings will be upon our elected leaders, that they will make good choices and lead appropriately our city, our county, our state, and our nation. Bless us to be in tune with Thee. We pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Matthew, if you'll go to the podium. Do we have a booster, or we hold that down for him, would you please?
May the audience please rise. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The audience may be seated.
You know, it's tough when the man giving the Pledge of Allegiance outdresses all of us. Thank you for being here with us tonight, young man. We now would like to approve the minutes of March 13th, April 10th, and April 17th of the City Council. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Upcoming events, there's a calendar for those of you interested that is posted by the sides of upcoming events in the city, and we invite you to any and all of those. We have one appointment to a board and commission. A Mr. Jim Evans, who's our former mayor of the city, has been invited to serve on the Summerfest Advisory Committee and has expressed a willingness and an interest in doing that. Would anyone like to so move?
I will move to accept that recommendation and put Mayor Evans in as the position defined.
Can I second it? Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We have an opportunity to have an oath of office rendered to our new city recorder. I don't know, Jackie, you do that, right? And Jody Ann Bates is our new city recorder. So with all the formality that we would like to muster with photographs and signatures after, would you please come forward and accomplish that task? I see some people getting in for a photo bomb. There you go.
Having been appointed to the office of Orem City Recorder, do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Utah, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Yes.
I wish ours had that. Now that was somebody just swearing in their boss, right? So thank you very much for accomplishing that task. Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, I understand you have a presentation to make tonight.
I do.
You're no stranger to us. We welcome you here.
Thank you. It is my pleasure and my honor to recognize and present the City of Orem with an award that the ambassadors of the Utah Valley Chamber bestow upon one business a month in recognition of their support and engagement in the business community. And the ambassadors, as you know, is our welcoming arm of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce. They can be seen at various ribbon cuttings, events, all sorts of opportunities to welcome new business to Orem and to Provo, as well as mentoring the new businesses and helping them to get involved in our community. So Orem City has been selected by our ambassador group to be the business of the month for the month of May. And I have a lovely certificate to present to you, and we'll have a sandwich board placed out in front as well, so you get all of the love and the kudos that you are so deserved as the city of the business of the month. So.
Well, thank you. We're honored to receive that. I really wish the mayor were here, who attends so many of those events with diligence, and we appreciate this honor. In part, a large part goes to our mayor as well as the city staff, and we thank them all.
And city council. All of you at one point or another are visible at a lot of the ribbon cuttings and a lot of the events that are arranged to bring the business community together. So in part, I think it's the mayor, but it's the council and it's all of staff. And I do have some ambassadors here. Kathy.
Ambassadors, would you please stand?
And Ryan is also an ambassador. This 6 o'clock time kind of messes with family time after they've been here.
The Jazz aren't playing tonight, or are they?
They are.
Okay, so that could. 6 o'clock could have an impact. But
here, and Kathy and Ryan are here. All right.
Thank you.
Approach the stand.
Please, of course.
And we'd like to have a group photo.
Wonderful.
If we can do that. Thank you.
Hug.
Round of applause.
Well, thank you.
This will be plastered all over social media.
Sure will.
Yeah.
Being confused.
Where's our stick face of the mayor? Leave him in here.
Stick face. Stick face.
Oh, there's two more? Yeah. Okay, we'll take this shot and then the ambassadors come.
1, 2, 3, ready? Okay.
Got us?
Yep.
Okay. Kathy and Amy. Amy is with Costco, and she's got a yummy cake in the refrigerator for you.
And cookies too.
Oh, and cookies too. Wow. You're living right. Maybe that's what's happening. You can do what you want. Ryan, you're part of this. Nice try, Ryan.
Oh, sure, now, yeah, see, it's too late. All right, ready? Cheers. Okay, I got you. You got it. Oh.
There we go. Thank you. For fun.
They're winning right now. Just saying, 7-5. Started? Oh,
What's that?
This is the letter from David Busey.
Well, thank you. That's great to be appreciated that way by our business community. We thank you for that. We have set a few minutes apart for personal appearances at each city council, and we have 3 who have signed up to do that. Or Rana, did you just handle yours?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so we have 2 signed up who are no strangers to the city council. So we first will welcome David and then Mark, and if you'd state your name, you don't need to state your address, but just, and as you know the drill, you have 3 minutes. And you've given us some information already, I think.
I have. Thank you. My name is David Busey. Many of the petitioners for the Palos Verdes rezone asked that the city council be told about what they experienced. So I prepared this little brief for you. I took the liberty of passing out my talk, the report that I've compiled, and also I gave you, no, I didn't give you, I lent you some copies of the petition, which as you thumb through the 20 pages or so I gave you, you'll see that the addresses are pretty broadly spread throughout Orem. When you're done with those, would you please pass them towards Debbie, putting yours on top of the stack as you go so that the numbering can be retained. We should be able to provide a breakdown by quadrant once we get the data completely analyzed. These signatures, I dare say, are sacred to the 56 petitioners that turned in booklets. There were 31 women, there were 25 men, most were retired folks, but many were also young parents or singles. They collected between 10 and 15 signatures per hour. Some were got at the rec, some the library or the caucuses, but most were door to door. Probably more homeowners than renters. This signature rate was fairly constant throughout the 40-day period, 10 to 15 per hour. So that to get 9,000 signatures takes about 900 man-hours, somewhere between 600 and 900 person-hours. The little plot you see shows what the number of signatures per petitioner was, and you can see that there's a fairly broad distribution. Some did 50, some did 600. Depending on the neighborhood, the opposition to signing the petition ran about 5 to 25%. And to sample their experiences, I asked the petitioners from the Let Orem Vote, I asked the Let Orem Vote leaders to give me permission to survey the petitioners, and I emailed them a set of 5 questions and compiled the replies that I received. I'll just read the first answer to each question to give you the introduction, because they're reasonably representative. You know, each person had different answers, and as you read through all the answers, you'll see that there's a lot of common theme. I admit that this is a lot like, oh, I'm out of time. What were the one or two most common pitches you made to invite the people to sign the petition? I usually started off telling them that there was a high-density apartment complex going and where it was going to be. Number 2, did you ever point out the last line of the petition that the referendum vote would be at the next municipal election in November 2019? How often? I always offered each person an opportunity and always told them. What were the 2 or 3 most common responses you got?
Thank you. As you stated, we do have this in triplicate copies, and thank you very much.
Enjoy. Thank
you, David.
Yes, please.
I'm not positive they stayed in numerical order. I'm sorry. It was not intentional. Sir Mark.
I lobbied real hard to see if the Costco lady would bring cheesecake. So I wanted to talk to you.
Your name, for the record, please.
Mark Tippett, my address, 876 South, 725 West, Orem, Utah. An area of concern that I want to bring to you tonight. The concern is the property located at 727 West, 800 South. This home is abandoned. The owner left Utah about 10 years ago. She was a hoarder. The outside is strewn with boxes, shoes, an old car, and it is still the same today as the day she left. The lawn is never watered. The yard had 2 large, beautiful walnut trees, which are now dead. The home is fenced, but several months ago the fence was broken, and that made the backyard accessible. We have snapped photos of drug deals, and recently the Orem police made an arrest there concerning drugs. Several years ago, when we had no parking signs put up, that area was approved, but the sign never got put there. So cars are parking there, and some of those cars are parking there in order to get drugs. And so I wanted to point that out to you.
Have you let the city know about this?
Several times.
Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, we finally went and we put the part of the fence that was knocked out, we put that back up. With the current rains, the weeds and the dug grass is over a foot high now. As the days get warmer, the tall grass will become a fire danger. The backyard is stacked with boxes, wooden doors, large wooden swing set. The home is surrounded by bushes that without water will become dry tinder. 1 cigarette butt, a bottle rocket, and this home will go up in flames. It will also endanger the surrounding homes if this happens. I'm pleading that the city condemn this home. Send a certified demand letter to the owner to clean up the home or put the home on the market and sell it. If you need further information about this, please contact me. My phone number is 801-318-0126. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the citizens here listening, there is a procedure we go through when there are these type of problems that don't allow an immediate reaction in order to protect the property rights of all. I mean, that's an interesting dilemma. And Jamie, I'm sure that your staff will continue to work this. Thank you.
Mr. Tippett, would you mind just repeating the address of that property so I can make sure that we follow up with our police department?
727 West, 800 South. And you just, there's, all it needs is that one sign that parking permit required. I know that area was all, but I think he ran out at that one home and just hasn't made it back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I got several comments from Orem residents that were happy to get the good neighbor mailer that went out of how we ought to care for our, what kind of neighbor we ought to be, and we hope that others will do that. Thank you. We have no consent items, but we do have a public hearing, number 15. This is being presented by Mr. Stephen Downs of the City Manager's Office. Steve, could you take front and center and introduce who you're bringing with you?
Mayor, City Council, I have with me Vicki Johnson. Vicki has chaired our CDBG Advisory Commission. This is a group of citizens that have come together to hear presentations from different nonprofits in our organization that help provide services to low and moderate income families. Obviously, and you'll see with the allocation, very critical services from child abuse therapy, sheltering for women that are subject to domestic violence, to health care and such. I'm going to get a little overview. Just for the audience's sake, we can answer any, of course, any specific questions. HUD requires, with the federal government, the Housing and Urban Development Office, requires that we do 2 public hearings. We do 1 public hearing to kick off a 30-day period for public input. During that 30-day, we receive input or don't receive input, depending on people's concerns or thoughts about the allocation. And then we come together, which is tonight, after that 30-day period, to make 1 final presentation, have 1 more public hearing, and then that allocation is sent to the federal government as our proposal to use the resources that they're providing for us. A little bit of history is 1974 is when the program started. We've been a recipient for many of those years. Any city over 50,000 has the ability to become an entitlement community. We have done that. Those resources are given each year to the city of Orem. There's 3 other organizations in Utah County that receive Provo, Lehigh, and then Utah County itself, all for the same purposes of this program, which is to strengthen low-income neighborhoods and help low-income individuals maintain a quality of life or have some type of services that may help them in their life. So we've received historically about $600,000. This last year, ironically, President Trump's original budget eliminated the program completely. So it went from potentially 0 to a 10% increase. So when all the negotiations were done, they increased the program 9.1%, which is what reflected here. So last year we received about $637,000. They told us to anticipate about the same until the budget agreement was reached, and then we received $70,000 more than we received last year, which is the $706,586. By the time we'd received that number, we had already gone through an allocation process. And so we're not changing our proposed allocations. Unused funds rolls into a line of credit that we will be able to allocate in a coming year or during the year if a program were to come up. So this year's funding totals $867,994, which comes from an allocation which we had budgeted as a tentative amount, program income from loans that we've given out for housing rehabilitation projects that will be paid back, and then unspent money in previous years. These are the list of those that served on this commission. We appreciate the time they spent. A total of 4 different evenings for about 3 hours each. They did it for no compensation other than a sandwich each night. And so we appreciate Vicki and those that served alongside her to bring this recommendation. again, without going through the full amount, I have Vicki here if you have any specific questions. But this is the allocation that is being proposed for that. Please, Tom.
And for the public, I'd note that these are the amounts are on the in the agendas on the side, so you can see this.
So again, the services range all over. There's a limit that only 15% of the money coming in can be used for these types of services. The rest needs to go to infrastructure type projects. And so you'll see anything from helping adults with disabilities or children with disabilities, food for the homeless, adult literacy, children's literacy, health care, domestic violence shelters. The range of services is quite great. And then we also have some dedicated to our code enforcement to give additional awareness and services to these low-income neighborhoods, which are often the ones that are challenging when it comes to needs for code enforcement. But it's not just to go into those neighborhoods and do additional enforcement on weeds, but it's to reach out to them and connect with them and connect them to other resources to help hopefully bring up the quality of their home. We also have money allocated to public facilities, which is to invest in a myriad of things, but the thing we've been focusing on recently, we did it at Sharon Park last year, is to invest in these parks in these low-income neighborhoods. Often that's the quality of life that they enjoy, is they connect their neighborhood with their park. We want them to invest in their property. We feel like it's important that we invest in ours to jointly bring the neighborhood up. And then there's some allocated for administration of the program and a Section 108 loan payment that we have used many years ago and will continue to pay for a handful of more years to create jobs in the community, and that has been successful. So for Vicki or I, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and then of course.
Councilwoman LaRae?
So Vicki, on the committee, did you have a certain criteria of like how you allocated it? Was it how many people they serviced, or was it whether it was women or children? Kind of give me an idea of what you were thinking.
Our priority is to help the most amount of Orem residents for our dollar. And so as we went through the process of deciding how much money to give to different organizations, some it seems like a lot or it doesn't seem like enough. And it really comes down to serving our Orem residents.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Other questions? This is a public meeting, so I open it to the public if there's any questions or comments from the public. Not seeing any, I return it to the council. And I think you need a recommendation to move this forward, correct? This will be finalized next time in our.
This we did have.
Oh, this is number 2 of 2. So for those of you, we've gone through all this before as a city council, both in pre-planning work meetings and in our last scheduled meeting for the city council. So this is not new to any of us. So as we move on this relatively quickly, it's because we've had several weeks to look at this and have the background information.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Please.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt the CDBG recommendations from the CDBG Commission, and with great appreciation for their time and energy and thoughtfulness in the process.
For the 2018-19 year.
Exactly.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Sumner?
Aye. Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you for your help. And Vicki, I notice you have one vacancy in your committee, so if members of this group would like to maybe be on this, it's a way to help people, particularly who are in a misfortunate point often in their life. And so thank you for your efforts in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank your committee as well. Thank you for your time. And I guess if we're only feeding you sandwiches at your other meeting, you can grab one of the cookies at the back on the way out.
I'll find them.
The next is a residential parking permit area. You're the man tonight.
Apparently, sir.
Please come on in and give us a little bit of information. For those, again, he'll adequately explain it. If he doesn't, we'll go from there.
Mr. McDonald and then City Council, I'm here to present a proposed neighborhood parking district. The area that it affects are Cherry Drive, which is about 650 west, between 650 south and 800 south. And all of the residents or homeowners have signed a petition for this except for one. There's one home that wants to be excluded, and that is at 719 South Cherry Drive. And yeah, Pete's going to pull up the area. It's that house right there is the one home.
Can you blow that up a little bit so we get just the neighborhood?
The picture, not the house.
Thank you.
So that one home there is the 719 South, and they do not wish to participate. Everyone else on that street does and have signed the petition either by themselves. Two of them had me sign it because they're in town or are renter or rent their home, and so they don't even live here in the county.
So for those of you who may not be familiar with what this is, when you an area can request, given certain requirements, to have parking limited to those with a permit. It does create a little bit of a hassle when you have a guest come over because you have to get him or her a temporary permit. But when they're finding a lot of people coming into their neighborhood who are parking who aren't part of the neighborhood, some areas of Orem have requested this.
Yes, sir.
So while we're interested in your email, we'd be more interested in that map. Thank you very much, Peter.
I did do a traffic study on this, and it is a problem, especially in the morning times. And generally speaking, what I've seen is there are UVU students parking there and then walking to school. And the one problem that affects this Cherry Drive more is every area around it is already part of a neighborhood parking district. And so everybody pushes to that one. So it has been a problem from the times that I've been down there and seen that. And what we will do if this passes is we will issue every homeowner there a parking permit to be a sticker placed on the windshield of their car for every vehicle registered at that home. And then we will give them 2 temporary permits for any visitors. And we've always given them more if they come in and meet with me and kind of explain their situation. So we do our best to make sure everybody has enough passes.
Thank you. Any items or questions from the council? Go ahead, Sam.
So I just had a couple questions related to the one that abstained from signing the petition.
Yes.
And how that would actually be enforced or not enforced. So if we leave that one home out of the permit area, so would it be red striped or would it just be a sign?
These are all signs, sir. So what we would do is on that home, on both corners of the property, put a sign that says Neighborhood Parking District and have arrows pointing away from their home.
Okay.
So if I'm the house, we've got 2 signs pointing this direction. So in between those 2 signs is not a district.
And if in theory we did include that home in this parking permit area against his or her wishes, would their guest, if they were staying and parking in front of the home, could they potentially be ticketed even if he didn't call and report that, hey, there's somebody parking in front of my home?
If we didn't have those signs posted there saying it wasn't?
In other words, if that home was included
Yes.
against his wishes, would his guests be at risk of receiving a parking citation even if nobody from that property called and said, hey, there's somebody illegally parked in front of my home?
Yes, sir, he would.
Okay.
The police police those areas and ticket accordingly.
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
Mr. Sumner.
Yes, this is a concern in this entire area for parking, mainly because UVU. I guess my question is, it requires city staff, city enforcement. It's troubling to the neighbors. Is UVU helping us with this problem in any way?
In this particular problem?
Well, like I mentioned, it's all around that area. Are they?
It's everywhere.
Their police force, are they helping us?
No, sir. No, sir. This falls solely on our shoulders to enforce. And
they would have no jurisdiction off campus, correct?
No.
Or limited jurisdiction, not parking jurisdiction.
Limited, not parking, especially because our parking citations are civil, not criminal. They would have really no way to cite any buddy parking in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sam, another from you?
Yep. So back on the same property, if they were to decide, let's say a year from now, because students or whoever has been parking there decides, oh well, this one home doesn't have a parking permit area, and they get inundated with people parking in front of their home, and they decide a year from now, okay, actually we do want to be included. Do we need to come back to this same type of initiative, or do we need a second resolution to update that parking permit area, and what would be the cost involved to re-sign the area and things like that?
In years past, sir, what we had to do is brought it before the city council again and let everybody know that there's going to be a public hearing so they can voice their opinions. And then as far as cost, we would just basically pull out 2 signs. Pull out the 2 signs on their property because the other signs at the end of the block would already point towards their property.
Okay. Thank you.
This also is a public hearing. If there's people who'd like to speak to this subject, they're invited to come forward and share the mic with the officer. Since you're so intimidating, officer, no one's willing to come forward and share the mic with you, so I bring it back to the council. Anyone ready to make a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion that we make a resolution to create the residential parking permit area on Cherry Drive between 650 South and 800 South, both sides of the street, excluding this one property that was identified in the resolution.
Second.
Second from Councilwoman LeRae. Debbie.
Aye.
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 The motion carries. Thank you very much, officer. Appreciate you filling in on last minute. We now have a public hearing regarding SLU Code 5511 in the CM zone. And of that, we'll find out more what all those letters and numbers mean here shortly. Jason Bench is the presenter.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. Tonight is this item is a very simple request. The applicant, as soon as our...
Is the applicant here by chance? Looks like you're going solo, Jason. I don't see that.
I don't see him here tonight, no. So tonight is a simple request to amend the Standard Land Use Code to add 5511 as a permitted use in the CM zone, which is the manufacturing zone. If I can go to the location map. So it's the Orem Business Park down on Geneva Road and University Parkway. So you can see the CM zone outlined. What he's simply requesting, I guess, is to do a permitted use with a caveat that the display of any vehicle associated with the sales would be taken in at night. This is an office warehouse typical use, and so they'll have a retail component. He does a lot of his sales online, and so we'll have a few displays during the day, but we'll take the inventory in at night. And the city's okay with that. The Planning Commission actually made a recommendation for approval, and we support that recommendation.
For the public's notice, we recently did this in the same area for someone who wanted to sell boats in a similar way, pull boats out in the day and then garage them at night. Is that correct, Mr. Bent?
That's correct. And they've been open for a month or so and are complying with the requirements.
Items from the City Council. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sam, your light's up. Sorry.
Is the CM zone in use in other parts of Orem, or is it just in this one location?
This is the one location.
Okay, so we won't have anybody in a different business park, for example, that would be negatively impacted or without their knowledge. It would just be this one.
Correct.
Okay.
And the city's comfortable because of the fact that they have to take that inventory in at night. We're not going to see a 50-car.
Well, they'll be limited by the number they can garage in the evening, right?
Right.
Mr. Seastran.
Tied into that with parking, since we allocate parking or determine parking requirements based on use, how would this affect the parking of a complex, considering that they're taking up daytime parking spaces?
So if it's going to be a multi-tenant, they're usually allocated so many spaces per their lease, and that would be what they would be limited to. So if they had 10, for example, they could potentially have 10 vehicles, but they would have to take them in at night. So whatever their lease allows them to do, right. They could be able to park.
But no place for people to come shopping for those vehicles.
Right. That's true. This typical, the reason he's doing this is the state does require a physical location of up to 3 stalls or a minimum of 3 for a dealership to be established in the state of Utah. So they have to have a location that has at least 3 parking stalls. He's indicating that he may have 3, he may have a few more, but no more than that because it's more of an online business.
And if the complex is not happy with it, then they can address that in their...
It'd be a lease agreement between the two of them, yep.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see anything else from the City Council. So again, this is a public hearing. We'll open it to the public if anyone's come to discuss this issue. Seeing no one come forth, I'll bring it back to the council. Anyone feel like they've got their motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Dave, please.
I'd like to make a motion by City Council ordinance amending a portion of the Appendix A of the Orem City Code pertaining to Standard Land Use SLU Code I-511, motor vehicle and new and used sales in the CM zone.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Lentz, thank you. Debbie?
Aye.
David?
Were we ready to go that?
We had a first and a second. Did we have any comments? I'm sorry, I moved right to the vote.
No.
I'm on.
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Jason, I think you're next on the docket as well with number 18, Amendment PD 19 and Appendix M.
Yes, thank you. So South Rim is a current condominium.
By the way, is the applicant here or his representative?
I know Mr. Dudley's here.
Would you like to join us front and center, or you comfy on the back row? You comfy on the back row, or would you like to come on up?
Come up.
We know what kind of people you are sitting on the back row. Mr. Dudley, I'm ashamed of you. Come on up.
So if I can just briefly outline, this is the South Rim condominium.
You can sit right by Jason, right here on the hot seats if you'd like. Yeah, thank you.
I didn't mean to take the middle.
Would you like to identify your guest, please, Jason?
So, Roger Dudley to my, my right. Thank you.
John Dester.
You might need to push the button on your mic there. Out is on. There you
go.
Up is on.
It's John Dester, for those of you in the back who can't hear. Don't know how the audio visual is working, but we've got your name. Thank you, Mr. Dester.
Well, Mr. Dester is the builder who will be building these units.
Thank
Roger is the engineer for the project. So just by way of background, if I can get this thing to work, this is the South Rim condominiums that were built years ago. They've been in existence for quite some time. In 2015, the applicant came in and had these two homes here that was actually rezoned to the PD 15. And now they're ready to proceed with...
PD 19?
PD 19, excuse me, yes. Proceed with the construction.
These aren't owned by the same people. They just have the same PD zone, or you...
Same PD, different owners, yes. This is the current concept plan that the council approved back in 2015. They're requesting that be modified to a sixplex rather than two triplex units. So you can see the parking was in the middle. This is... what they're proposing at this time. As part of that, they also want to have basements. The current, you can see the red line strikeout that basically require that the only ability to have a sewer is if it could be gravity fed. They're requesting that an amendment be made that they allow dry basements, meaning that no water fixtures, sinks, tubs, showers, toilets, those type of things could not be in the basement. They would have to be on the first level or second level, so the gravity feed to the sewer system. The Planning Commission reviewed this and made a recommendation that it made sense to them, as long as and the applicant understands that they can't have any of those types of things in their basement. So there's two amendments they're proposing tonight. One is this text amendment that would allow them to have a basement with no restrooms or plumbing fixtures. The other is to amend the concept plan that would add this as an option rather than the separated triplex units. It would be an inline unit, and then they would also change the elevations from these are the current elevations to this, which would be the sixplex. Similar materials. I don't know if you know Mr. Dester. He does a lot of building in Provo and in the county and does a great job.
And you decided to move to our fair city. Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
So his units are anyway, very well done. So
I have a question for Mr. Dester, and then I think one for Mr. Dudley, if I may. Mr. Dester, you're switching from 2 3-plex to 1 6. Is the layout of the property, as you've played around with perhaps architects and engineers, will provide you better parking, better access? What was the motivation for that?
The real motivation is that you get a private backyard. And I didn't see that really delineated here. You can see it right there, and maybe you can see it, that if we align them in 6 and align them
I think Jason's blowing it up to give us some benefit of what you're showing us right there.
And the idea is that to orient them this way, you have a very useful backyard that's fenced and private for each home.
Can you show us a 3-plex and how that wouldn't have done, the 2 3-plexes, if that's okay, John?
We just didn't have room. See that?
Yeah.
There's just no room behind it. So the overall site plan here is a lot airier, if you will. A lot
more green
open space. Yeah.
How's the parking? Same number of parking?
Or more. Mm-hmm.
Same number.
Okay. And how many parkings do you build for twos? Do they have a garage or not?
They don't have a garage. They'll end up having carports where it's a single carport, and then they have another open space.
So is there two per?
Yeah, there's two or more per. Does it show on that how many?
16 on there.
They have 17 total, so 2 per unit.
They got 14 total?
Plus an extra.
Plus one extra.
17 total.
Okay, so they 3 extra. 6 times 2 is 12.
Oh,
so we'd have maybe
I was thinking
5
8.
extra.
Excuse me.
Okay, 5 extra.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Dudley, have you seen dry basements before in other areas? Again, my ignorance, if I get a flood, everything, I think water flows downhill. That's one of the early things I remembered. And gratefully in my basement, I have a drain. So if things are catastrophic, I know they'll ultimately go away and into our fine Orem City area. When you have a dry basement, you don't have that benefit. Tell me, and maybe some of these will have wet basements. I don't know if they're able to get sewer. But how many of these are going to be dry, and is this uncommon, or can you educate me on that, please?
The main advantage of it is that it allows them to have storage. Storage, in other words, most of this will be used for storage. I don't see an issue in plumbing in terms of a danger there. The 2 floors above will, of course, gravity sewer to the sewer in the street. The sewer in the street's only about 3.5 feet deep. And so in this case, we're not able to do that. But the thought was that we get this additional space. It's relatively inexpensive for those who live there to have additional space below them. That's the advantage. We don't.
It'll have full-size ceilings. They can entertain in there. They could have a TV room or whatever. They just can't have a sink.
Correct.
Or any other plumbing fixture.
Or storage. And so it's a major sale item, and for those who live there. That's just additional space.
And will all of them be dry basements, or will some have access to water?
No, all will.
All dry.
I think, Debbie, you were first, and then Mr. Lentz.
So will these be owner-occupied instead of rentals?
Not initially. Kim and Allison will own them, but they are being platted in such a way that in the future, if they wanted to be sold off individually, like so many of the projects that I do, you could sell them off each one individually or 2 here. It kind of helps too with passing them on, if you will. That you could, if you plat it right, like we're going to do, then 2 could go to one child, 2 could another, 2 another, that kind of thing.
Kim, my Irish friend?
Is Kim? Yes, Kim.
Alice, tell him I said
back
bye.
there.
I thought so. Thank you.
And what's the square footage on these?
On these, there's about 1,400, 1,450, something like that, on the 2 levels. And then you have the other in the basement, so you really could have 2,100.
And do you have a certain demographic in mind for, is this more of a senior or?
You know, the interesting thing is I get asked that every time, and we've built a couple thousand of these. Literally, these first ones were built on 8th North. It's called the Colonies. It's on 8th North and 4th West. You guys have driven by them a million times. And when I get asked that question, who's the demographic? It's everybody. It's anybody and everybody in this room. We've sold them to all ages, and because the product actually lends itself to different people at different times in their life. So it isn't just a starter home necessarily. We do sell them to everybody.
Thank you.
Is this the same project we approved for the O'Neills a few years ago, and it hasn't moved yet? Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Lentz, please.
So question for Jason and potentially Mr. Shirkey at the back. I know he's getting ready for the next agenda item, but the way the amendment is proposed here, would that leave the door open potentially to connect those basements into Provo's sewer system? I'm not even sure if that is allowed. Or
It's not even possible at this point. Okay. It's too far away from Provo, and it wouldn't happen.
Okay. Are there several properties in between the boundary of Orem and Provo?
Show us that map again, would you please, Jason?
Yeah, it doesn't quite go all the way, but yeah, there's probably a quarter mile before you get to, well, maybe not that, but at least a quarter mile before you get to the Provo border.
Are those current buildings still standing, the houses that are there, or have they been raised?
No, the house is presently occupied that's there on the site.
Okay. Is there just one home? I thought it was 2.
I think it's 2.
Okay. And they're just being rented at this point for its current use. Okay.
Right.
So maybe I'm not seeing the map correctly. If I'm looking at this right, isn't this property right up against the Provo-Orem border?
Well, so here's the Provo border. So you'd have to come all the way across, and then this is the hillside area.
But I guess isn't that the larger portion of PD19? That's all part of the same project.
And that's already built, right?
Oh, okay.
So we're not. Yeah, we would not let them or advise them to connect into.
So if those other areas were developed and could reach, I mean, I don't know how often we hook up with Provo, that might change it. But until it is, it's being approved as a dry basement, and they would come a dry. Is it dry basement? Am I using the terminology correctly?
Yeah.
And then if it changed in the future, it might. But at this point,
there are exceptions throughout the city. That there are a few next to borders that we do connect, and vice versa. Some have connected into Orem sewer, some connected into Provo. It's something we discourage and wouldn't want to see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Well, I think this too is a public hearing, so we ask anyone from the audience who might be interested in commenting on this to come forward. Thank you. We see you again. I've forgotten your name already. I'm sorry.
Gary Watts. It's just a question that I have with PD19. I know there's possibilities of pump fed, affectionately called poop pumps. Does PD19, it looks like to me that it disallows that. And just wondering, is that something that's set for PD19? If someone wants to put a pump in their basement to pump wastewater, does it have to be rezoned to a different location? Or I don't know how Orem handles that, so that's just a question on that.
It would have to be amended because the way that it's written now, we wouldn't allow sump pumps or those type of things to pump it out of the basement. That's something that we also discourage just because if there are failures, we don't want to have that as an issue.
The currently built PD19 either has access to sewer or has no basement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because this is an amendment to allow a basement where you don't have access. Before, you couldn't have basement at all.
Right.
Now you can have a dry basement if you can't hook to sewer.
That is correct.
Thank you. And again, if you get a copy of the a notice of this meeting, it'll have that kind of stricken for you, so you can see that. Other comments from the audience? Seeing none, I take it back to the council and look for either further discussion or a motion. Which are you doing, discussing or moving?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Make a motion that the City Council amend Section 22-11-31B2C of the Orem City Code pertaining to the basement in the PD19 zone and amending Appendix M pertaining to the layout building in the PD19 zone.
Second.
Mr. Sumner.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
We now have a resolution. Mr. Shirkey, I think you're up. Here he is. Regarding the funding and implementation of advanced metering infrastructure in the city of Orem.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. If you can give me just a moment here to set up.
I think that should be the title. Whoever has it.
Uh-oh.
Bam, Mayor Pro Tem. That's an honor of his years of service.
Tom, where's that where is that building?
I've seen that. That's in Italy, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is.
We were kind of expecting to see the Jazz game playing in the background.
Well, I do have an update on the score, but
yeah, that's a close game.
Are they playing tonight?
See if it works this time. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to do that.
Well, you're showing us pictures instead of your personal emails, so we have a bit of a trade-off here.
Your screen.
We just need to be home by halftime, Chris.
Different screen.
For the people who are here, there are meters that you can build that will allow you to see the water without actually having a meter reader going, and that's what Mr. Shirkey is going to be discussing tonight. Much like you can control the heat in your house often from your smartphone, you can look at things from other locations. And we hope it has greater technical abilities than we do on these meters we're talking about. Yeah, we could skip it and just go through this as well, Chris, if it doesn't work. You're right. Thank you, Mr. Davidson.
Yeah. I'd like to thank my technical support staff for being here tonight, except I can't see it now. Let's see. I guess we'll shoot here from the hip. Okay. All right. Apologize for that. Tonight we're here to talk to you about Water Smart grants. These are water and energy efficiency grants. They are distributed through the Department of Interior in the United States, Department of Interior, through the Bureau of Reclamation. I just wanted to give some background on the history of why we're here tonight, asking for your support, an expression of support for this grant. And to give you the background, we have a water master plan that was adopted in 2016 by the City Council. And a significant part of that master plan included the deployment of AMI technology, that stands for Advanced Metering Infrastructure Technology, throughout the city over a 5-year period. The council did adopt that plan and a financial plan that was tied to that. The funding, anticipated funding necessary for this project was $6.5 million, and that will start in FY 2019. The city is pursuing other funding options and alternatives as a result of this high dollar value. The Water Smart background is as following. This Water Smart water and energy efficiency grant funding has been around for many years, and it's primarily targeting communities or water purveyors that have the rights to deliver water and also to develop power through hydroelectric facilities. It's an attempt to leverage their money, so our money, towards making these water-wise and water-smart infrastructure improvements, so the AMI and the metering infrastructure. We anticipate that this project will probably save around 5 to 10%, or conserve around 5 to 10% of our valuable resource, which is water. Over the past 5 years, the Bureau of Reclamation has issued $20 to $50 million per year for Water Smart grants. In this fiscal year, in March of this year, the Bureau of Reclamation issued $23.4 million or appropriated $23.4 million for Water Smart grants. Orem City staff, including Neil Winterton to my left, our Water Resources Manager, as well as Chris Wiltsey, who was our Public Works Management Analyst, have been working hard at developing this application. This has been a process that's been taking about 12 months to get to this point. However, in the last 3 months, we became aware of changes to this application. And these applications oftentimes have modifications or changes that are tied to the president and his agenda and various initiatives and desires. And so as a result of that, we had to significantly change our application and wording and address several items that weren't in the previous application. And so we come to you tonight making you aware that our application is now in place. It's been fully vetted by staff internally and also by our federal lobbyist, Nick Crockett, who is back in D.C. at this time. Mr. Crockett has obtained 2 letters of recommendation in support of this project, one by Representative John Curtis and the other by the Senator
hatch. The city is seeking a maximum $1 million grant, so we can't ask for more than $1 million, but you can ask for up to that amount. This application shows the project built in 2 phases, which allows the city to apply for another $1 million grant in 2 years. As suggested earlier, we anticipate that this could have a 5 to 10% reduction in water usage as a result of implementing AMI technology. And that benefits all of the users in the entire Provo River system. In the application, this language is specifically stated, and I'll just read this for you and for everyone here. It says, to include an official resolution adopted by the applicant's board of directors or governing body, in this case, City of Orem, City Council, or for state government entities, an official authorized to commit the applicant to the financial and legal obligations associated with the receipt of a financial assistance award under this funding opportunity, or the FOA. In other words, the city is required by resolution to express support of the Water Smart grant, which we've applied for. In addition, the city is required to work with the Bureau of Reclamation to meet the established deadlines for entering into a grant or a cooperative agreement, and third, to contribute to the funding specified in the funding plan of the Water Smart application. Does the City Council have any questions at this time? This concludes our presentation and information we needed to share with you to make you aware. If there's anything else we can answer or any questions you might have, please.
I have a couple, Chris.
Please.
First of all, are we committing the city to spending money on these meters in the future if we do this application?
Yes.
And how? Okay. I'm sorry, Neil, you had a different...
Not if we do the application, but if we accept the award and execute an agreement, then we will commit at that time. This doesn't commit us at this time.
Okay, because in my mind, we hadn't yet committed to it. We had put it in the budget for some time in the future, but knew it would come forward. So at some point certain, we were going to need to commit to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When awarded, if it is awarded.
And accepted.
Then we are committing.
Okay. And my second point, you said this could reduce water use by 5 to 10%. Is that just kind of an estimate on how much we might be losing from older meters that are leaking and less effective? Is that how you perceive the water savings?
It actually, this will allow the users, it puts the power of using water in their hands more directly, and so they can monitor that more efficiently,
so is it
more wisely.
Change their practices? Because I haven't changed practices since I've had one. But will other people change practices, or because my meter isn't leaking? Is it a combination of that?
It's a combination of that and also our tiered rate structure. And so it'll put the power of intelligent decision-making into the consumer's hands.
Okay.
And they can have that.
So if they alter lifestyle, that's how we change most of the...
Correct. And these tools will help them to make those changes or make those decisions.
Mr. Lentz.
So if we receive the grant and we accept the agreement to proceed, how does that impact our water master plan? Does it just accelerate this project? Do those monies that we were setting aside for this project shift over to saving for a storage tank? Do we slow the rate of increase over the next few years? Tell us, if we achieve X amount, how does that impact?
Excellent question, Sam. Thank you. In this time of I would say a bit of a booming economy, construction costs have increased quite a bit, and we feel like they are probably exceeding the inflationary component tied to our master plan. And so we will need to gauge that probably on an annual basis to reevaluate that. We anticipate that this would allow us to move projects forward if these costs aren't excessive, I would say, or if they don't exceed the $6.5 million that was anticipated 2 years ago. So, yeah, our plan would be to accelerate if at all possible, and then to reevaluate on an annual basis.
Preparatory to this coming back and being approved, et cetera, at some point, maybe you've already pulled this information together, a cost benefit of how much we save by not having meter readers go out. and how quickly this payback will be. If we invest $6.5 million, the payback's a lot slower than if we only invest $5.5 or $4.5. So at some future city council meeting, could you have that information for us?
Yes, we will.
I'm not expecting you to have that information today, but part of this is a savings on not having people go out, right?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Lentz again.
And just to reiterate, the app that you can download to track that on your phone, there's no cost to that to the consumer, right? So, if I wanted to track my daily water usage, I don't have to pay for some kind of external service. That's included as part of this, correct?
Our goal is to make that included as a part of this.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from the City Council? No discussions? This is not an open item, so I would accept a motion to allow them to move forward. Please, Debbie.
I move by resolution that we support the funding and implementation of advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, throughout the city as outlined in the Public Works Department's Water Smart Grant application.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Debbie.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Yeah. Resolution passes. Please keep us posted on how that goes.
We will. Thank
you. Any monthly financial summary information?
No, it's just included in your packet.
We saw that. Thank you. And information items from the city manager.
Just cake.
Just cake. Wonderful. Well, Chris, yours was obviously not the most exciting part on the agenda since people have left, but I will accept a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
In favor? Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Shake hands. Drop scouting part of it.
What is it? Someone else?
The LDS Church is dropping scouting.
Mormon. Thank you, Gary. Yeah.
You know, if you pray
How many
for
times
Chad,
did you fall asleep tonight?
you know,
Thanks.
a little faith, brother.
Kind of slips your mind.
Thank you very much for coming. See you.
Very nice. Thanks, man. You like the meeting?
Thank you.
Nelson doesn't give me lots of change.
Thanks, young man.
That's true.
You're concerned.